going to do an introduction first. To my immediate left, Gulalai Ismail. Gulalai is a courageous Pashtun human rights activist from Swabi, Pakistan, who was educated from a young age about gender discrimination and women's rights and encouraged to engage in non-violent activism. In 2002, she founded Aware Girls with her sister Saba, aiming to challenge the culture of violence and oppression of women in rural Khyber, what she said. And my apologies, that was culturally insensitive, and I call out now that I'm dreadfully bad with pronunciation. In the northwest of Pakistan, they began running workshops providing girls and young women with leadership skills to challenge oppression and fight for their rights to an education and equal opportunities. Malala was a program attendee in 2001. I live for the day when I can be known by as Michelle. No surname needed. Gulalai established the Youth Peace Network in 2010, working to strengthen the capacity of young people as peace activists in their communities, and joined the Uniting Networks of Young Peace Builders Youth Advocacy Team in 2013, which led to the adoption of the UN Security Council Resolution 2250, Youth, Peace and Security. Despite repeated threats and danger faced by her and her family as a result of her activities, Gulalai continues her work in Pakistan through Aware Girls and the Youth Peace Network, and in 2017 was awarded the Anna Politkovskaya Award by RAW in war for her courage to speak out and defy extremism in the context of violence and armed conflict in her country. Welcome, Gulalai. My newest adopted daughter is Winnifred Selby. Winnie adopted me about half an hour ago as her second Australian mother, so I'm extremely honoured. Winnie's a student of Cambridge University, an alumna of Cambridge University Leading for Change Executive Education, and a fellow of the Royal Commonwealth Society. We need to change fellow to something more female-like, but anyway. Winnie is a multi-talented young social entrepreneur who's been dedicating her life to the economic empowerment of young people in her community. Identified in 2014 by Forbes as one of the social entrepreneurs in Africa to watch, Winnie is a social entrepreneur who consistently demonstrates her personal value of making a difference by using her talents to help others and her passion for empowering young people to be successful. She is an Zisha Prize Fellow, there's that word again, World Economic Forum Global Shaper, winner of the World of Children Award, the 2015 Dubai International Award, and the 2016 New African Woman in Science, Technology and Innovation Award. A recipient of the 2017 Queen's Young Leader Award, which recognises and celebrates exceptional young people aged 18 to 29 from across the Commonwealth, Winnifred received her award from Her Majesty the Queen at Buckingham Palace. She sits on the board of the Dawa Impact Investment Fund and the She Scholarships Fund of the EPF Educational Empowerment Initiative. Welcome, Winnie. And for some local flavour, it's my great privilege to introduce my dear friends, Alanna and Jade. Alanna, Bastin, Byrne and Jade Collins, who are the founders of Femeconomy. Did you know that you, women, make 85% of purchase decisions? And in Australia, it's estimated that women spend $818 billion each year. Well, that was in the 2016 financial year. Femeconomy uses consumer activism to progress gender equality by unlocking the power of the purse. If women buy from B2C and B2B brands that focus on and have women in leadership, women can and will impact the bottom line. This leads to more women in leadership to advance gender equality, and it's called the Femeconomy effect. There's a good hashtag for anyone tweeting. Companies with female leaders are more profitable, which means more opportunity for everyone. They're also less likely to have a gender pay gap. Just look at Energy Australia as a recent example. Gender balanced executive board, female CEO has closed their gender pay gap in one fell swoop. And that equals more money for the whole family. Female-led companies are more likely to have workplace flexibility, which helps women and men. Femeconomy approved companies have at least 30% female board members or 50% female ownership. Approximately 2,000 brands are listed on Femeconomy, and over 800, including mine, and over 800 receive Femeconomy's approval, including mine. This approach directly supports top-down strategies to improve gender equality on leadership teams. Any business who meets Femeconomy's approval criteria can choose to submit their brand. Welcome, Lan and Jade. And finally, me. I am the founder of Advancing Women in Business and Sport. I focus on gender equality advisory services and female leadership for women and the people that manage women in the sporting and medium-sized enterprise sector. I'm also the founder of Women Who Get It, which is a nifty little social enterprise. It's a women's network for women from all walks of life that I founded coming up for 2 years ago, and we've got nearly 3,000 members in it. It's a lot of fun. I'm also the co-founder of Culturally Diverse Women with my co-founders Div and Vic Pillay from Mind Tribes, and our mission is to advance culturally and linguistically diverse women into leadership in Australia. Given that coloured women occupy less than 2% of leadership positions in Australia, we've got a lot of work to do. I'm a director of a VFL for the oval ball followers, a VFL club in Melbourne called Williamstown Football Club, and chair of the Female Football Committee. I'm also a director, very proud director of Good Shepherd Microfinance, which is a microfinance organisation, part of the Good Shepherd ANZ network, and we were set up about 5 years ago to create fair and affordable financial solutions, particularly for women and girls, to break the cycle of poverty, but to include our most vulnerable and excluded Australians into financial inclusion and education. So, that's us. Economists say that firms or organisations exist to create shareholder wealth and long-term value. A social enterprise is a firm or an organisation that applies commercial strategies to create financial, social and environmental well-being. Each one of us here today are working in our social enterprises and other causes to create financial and social change for women and girls across the world. Our enterprises and endeavours are disrupting and creating systems and infrastructure to advance women and provide economic empowerment for women and girls. I grew up in a small town of about 18,000 people in Western Australia called Geraldton. And I learned some things when I was growing up in that town, and I learned some things about money and power, and I began my relationship with money and power at that time. Talking about money was vulgar. As a young woman, it was most impolite to talk about money, ask what anyone earned, or haggle over prices, or haggle over what you were being paid. I do remember my father being my chief negotiator for my first wage, and by crikey, he was a good one because he got me 25% more than they were offering. I also learned that women supported men to earn money. I also learned that having money meant you had choices. And then later, as I entered the workforce, and I entered the workforce very early. I left school at 15, much to the horror of my parents, who thought I was reasonably bright. I'm still waiting to not disappoint them. I left because I knew that a job meant that I earned money, and I knew that money meant choice, and frankly, choice meant I could escape from that country town that I was growing up in. But I learned about money giving me choice, I learned about having power, and I learned about having influence. And I also learned that money, power and influence at that point were largely the domain of men. I now talk to women all the time about money, power and influence, and they are my three guiding words when I think about the things that I do. What I want to do, as well as my colleagues here, is we want to create a gender equal world. I need money, I need power and I need influence to do that. So So like me, our panellists are all financial feminists. We all identify as feminists. We all identify as financial feminists. So now, enough from me, and let's hear from our delightful panel about what does being a financial feminist mean to each of you?
98% of the married women don't have any property in their name, either shared or not shared. So coming from that context, where women literally have extremely little access to finances, to assets, I think that without speaking of economic empowerment, without speaking of access to finances, my work on women's empowerment is incomplete. And therefore, when I work on girls' empowerment from the platform of Aware Girls, I do address the issue of economic equality. And the way I address it, it's not just by advocating for equal opportunities or advocating for equal pay for women within the opportunities that exist. I also speak about creating conducive and enabling environment for women where they can advocate for their economic rights. For example, in Pakistan, domestic workers are one of the women who are domestic workers who help in like cleaning or cleaning in homes. They are one of the most vulnerable sections of the society because it is still an informal sector of the work. So they don't have any minimum wage. They don't have any minimum wage defined by the government. They don't have any minimum working hours defined by the government. They don't have any kind of social security, any kind of leaves. When we started working with domestic workers in Peshawar, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa of Pakistan, we came to know that women who are domestic workers, they have to work 30 days a month. They don't get any leaves. They don't get sick leaves. And if they get sick, their pay is deducted. Even if they are sick and they take leave, their pay is deducted. So when I think that when we speak about, especially when I speak about economic empowerment, it means addressing issues of women across the classes. Also speaking about women who are at the bottom, who have the least access to education, who have least access to resources. When they work, what kind of work they do, what kind of circumstances they face, and how I can make it better for them. And also addressing, and it also means addressing issues of women who already have access to finances, who already have access to jobs, but even when they have access to jobs and money, the working environment still have many gender issues. For example, women who do work in Pakistan with men are often given permanent jobs, contracts are signed, but when women get jobs, they're often on contract, they're not permanent, they don't get social security. So for me, it's about women of each class, and that's why I have recently also joined, beside working with Aware Girls and working on the economic empowerment of women, I have also joined a political front which is known as Women's Democratic Front. It is more of a socialist, feminist, political resistance movement of women, which has recently emerged. Where grassroots level women in Pakistan have started it with the aim of actually challenging the patriarchal economy within Pakistan and to advocate for a new economy which is based on equality for everyone.
It's interesting, there's a comedian whose name escapes me in the UK who did a TED talk, I think it was last year, around why don't we start a political party for women, by women, for women. And so it sounds like you've done it. She's talking about it, you've done it, so yes. Well done. Yeah. Winnie, we talked briefly outside about your journey and the conditions in Ghana and the things that you do, particularly for girls, and being a great role model. I mean, this young woman's 23. She makes me feel quite inadequate. But anyway, tell us about financial feminism for you, and how does that play out in your environment in Ghana, which, the same as Pakistan, has so many barriers for women and girls advancing?
Okay. In my content, in terms of talking about financial feminism, I think that young women should be empowered economically to be able to be their authentic selves, to be able to think that they can be independent, to let them have the power to be able to also contribute. We need that right to be ourselves financially. So at the age of 15, I co-founded an organization called Ghana Bamboo Bites Initiative. I traveled to the northern part of Ghana, and I discovered that in terms of unemployment, it was really high, and most of these young women were being abused sexually. Some of these women from the northern part were actually migrating to the southern part just to look for employment opportunity, and most students were also working miles to school. So I asked myself, why are all these cultural limitations that is actually entangling women to be ourselves, to be able to initiate something, to be able to do something on our own, to be able to make an impact? So I decided to initiate that organization, which will create employment opportunity for women with primary or low education, so that at the end of the month we'll be able to pay them, and that they would be able to cater for themselves and then cater for their children as well, so that they would be financially stable. So we were 3 people that came together. We have created employment opportunity for 35 women in Ghana. We have inculcated in these young women the technology of bamboo bicycle making. In Ghana, there are a lot of bamboo that has been abandoned. So we decided to take this bamboo by adding value to the bamboo to address the transport need for people by turning this bamboo into bicycle, which will help farmers in terms of picking their farm produce from farm to the marketplaces, and then helping these women to be able to be financially stable, to take care of themselves. So these were some of the challenges, and about 3-4 years later, I realized that after we've been able to initiate this organization that has made a lot of impact, I realized that young women were facing a lot of cultural limitations, like issues related to menstruation as issue, and most of them is a taboo that most girls were missing class about 5 days in a month during their menses, just because they cannot afford sanitary pad. And the issue is they are not working. So if these people are not working, how would they be able to purchase their own sanitary pad? So it was actually pushing some of these girls to involve themselves into prostitution, which was messing these girls' lives up instead of they going to school. So these were a lot of challenges, and I was like, I have to do something to empower these girls. So I initiated the W3 initiative. What I do is I empower gender equality. I actually empower young women in the privileges for them to get access to education without restrictions. We produce educational materials like books, exercise books, and pen, and all these things are done by young women. We want to empower these women so that at the end of the day, they'll be able to get something on their own, to be financially stable, to be able to impact life of their generation. So we produce the sanitary pads for these girls, because I believe that being a woman is not just about being a woman. I always tell people that in the chest of a woman does not last only the expansion of breast, but of braveness, courage, and the passion to make impact. So I believe that women should be economically stable. We need to break that cultural limitation that women have no right to talk about money. We are women, and then we should be given these rights. So currently, I've impacted the life of 3,000 girls in Ghana. With these projects, we've created employment opportunity for 35 women.
Thanks, Winnie. You can now understand my inadequacy issues. Alanna and Jade, now tell us about, why did you leave the corporate world to start Femeconomy, and what were the drivers for both of you, collectively and individually?
So when my whole background is working in traditional male-dominated industries in mining and resources, both on operational mine sites and in corporate offices, trying to convince C-suite executives that it would be very good to have some women in leadership in the organisation, and I guess becoming more and more frustrated at not getting very far. In 2016, in January, I read a statistic that women make 85% of purchase decisions, and for me that was an aha moment. I immediately saw the massive economic leverage that women had already in our own hands to effect change and to accelerate achieving gender equality. So I had the idea for Femeconomy, which was really to identify which companies had women in leadership using a certain criteria, and I conscripted my sister-in-law, Alanna, to join me because she has a very handy international marketing background. So we kicked off we kicked off our website in September 2016, and initially we published 2,000 brands on the website with a consumer retail focus. And we've gone dead. And then... So initially we had 2,000 consumer brands on the site, and around 700 met our approval criteria of either 30% women on the board of directors or 50% female owned. Very quickly, our very vocal community, like Michelle Redfern, told us, yes, I'm a female consumer, but I am also a business owner, or I also work in corporate. How can I procure services from other female-led businesses? So we said, well, righto then, we'll launch business to business. And it's really interesting seeing the shift now in how people are using the site. Firstly, they look at their clothes, they think, well, what can I change about this? And then they look at professional services and they look, well, I'm in business, who else can I purchase from? So our site is built on the ethos of women supporting women. And I can't wait to see how this concept of women trading with each other can affect change in other countries like Pakistan, like Ghana, and all over the world. And I think as we grow this, we need to think about our international community and how we can actually put our arms around the change that you are trying to create in your community, how we can amplify your voice and your change to a wider audience so that we can create a global community of change.
Well done. And once again, a great double act there. So for me, there are three types of people in the world. People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who wonder what happened. I've always wanted to be in number one category, and clearly all four of you are in number one category. The work you do, the work that each of you do in your respective markets, geographies, in politics, is challenging, and I think that's a really trite word to use. It's challenging, it's dangerous, it's actually physically dangerous, it's psychologically dangerous. You've only got to be a feisty feminist with an opinion on Twitter. Go and listen to Jane Caro about how to manage that. But it's not easy work that you all do. So why do you do it? Well, I know, Jade, you talked about an aha moment, but why? Jump on in.
Why I do it? Because, when I started working for women's rights, I was only 15 years old. And when I started working with women, I was working with girls, and I was just giving them awareness on their basic rights, on their right to go to school, their right to go to vote, and their right to take part in politics. But very soon I realized that the right for girls or young women to go to school, their right to even vote, their right to take part in political processes, it's very much dependent on how much money they can earn. They will have choices in their lives if they are economically empowered. If they are less economically empowered, if they have less access to resources, they have lesser chances of making their own choices. A woman who have less money, in my context, a woman who either not earn money or who earns less money will have lesser chances of even having the right to decide whom she wants to marry. in my home, I can decide, like I had the right, if I want to marry someone, I had the right what I wanted to do in my life, but my cousins didn't have the right. And the difference was that I had access to money, they didn't have access to money. And that is why it was very important for me to help women become economically empowered. So one of the way that I did it was to launch an enterprise, a social enterprise, which sells women's crafts developed by women. But usually women in Pakistan, they are very good. They're very good in arts. Like, for example, the thing I'm wearing, the scarf, this is made by women. This is a woman craft. Woman arts is often known as woman crafts. So this is woman craft. But if a man sells it, the profit, a woman will make it, a man will sell it, and the man will take the profit, and the woman will take a really small amount of money for her labor. So through the enterprise, I'm trying to change that. The name of our enterprise is Jhalke. Jhalke means woman or girls, and in the profit which woman earns, most of the profit goes directly to the women who make the crafts, and some of the profit goes to education of girls, so that girls in those communities are much more empowered. Because if girls are, because then economic empowerment is also so much linked to education and the kind of education they get. If they are able to get education, and that's quality education, they will be able to earn money. And if they're not able to get education, they will not be able even to break the vicious cycle of poverty. For example, I'll tell you a story that, and it's a story from the day of my wedding. So when, in our country, when girls get, on the day of the wedding, I know that in the West, mostly women wear white and they stand and they dance, but in our culture, women wear red and they stand, they sit still, and they are supposed to be shy and looking downwards, but of course I was not the shy bride. So on the day of my wedding, when I was sitting, there was this one girl who was serving tea to everyone, and it was a bit shocking to me because it was not holidays, our wedding was not in the holidays. So I just asked her why you were here serving tea to the people and why you're not actually in the school, because it is supposed to be a school day. And she told me that her parents and her brother died in the conflict, in the military operation, and her mother is a domestic worker who could not afford her schooling, so she's working with her mother so that the family can live. And that was the story which kind of like which shook me, because this woman will never be able to go to school. This woman will never be able to break her cycle of poverty. She will never have the choice to who she wants to marry. Even if she gets married, she might be a victim. The chances are higher that she will be a victim of domestic abuse. So the access to money and access to education will impact her whole life. Her access to healthcare, her access to politics, her access to everything that she does in life. And that is why the work that I do around women's empowerment, giving them leadership skills, advocating for their quality education and their economic empowerment, because I think it's so much linked to my own life and girls' life in my community for a dignified life.
And I love that expression, a dignified life, and a life, not an existence, because the young woman you're talking about, it is an existence, isn't it? A hand-to-mouth existence, and the cycle can't be broken without money and education. It's a great segue, Winnie, to talk about education, and you've already touched on the fact that young women are excluded from education because of their menstrual cycle. But what was the catalyst for you saying, I've got to do something about this, the situation in your community, and how did you go about it?
Okay, so when I traveled to the northern part of Ghana when I was 15 years of age, and I had interaction with these girls, some of them, there were tears on their eyes. I felt how they were feeling because I'm a woman. I'm just a lady as they are. If I have gotten access to education and have become who I am now, what happens to them? And the question I asked myself that day was, if I have been able to do all these things, being a 23-year-old girl, impacting the life of 3,000 girls by producing these things for them, imagine the number of girls that are missing classes during their menstruation, if I am able to give them these products, these tools for them to also get access to education, how many people can they impact? That was the bigger question. So if one person has been able to impact 3,000 and there are more than about more than 50 girls, you can imagine the impact. In as much as it is risky traveling to these deprived villages miles by road to impact their lives, I do what I do because of the passion. I do what I do because of the ready, willing, and able spirit. I do what I do because I believe that women have the capability to nurture. I believe that if we give them access to education, they would be able to change the world. So these are the things that moves me to do what I do.
Thank you. A strong theme coming through is education.
I think for us, it's not just about educating women. We're actually educating governments. So we did a lot of speeches during Queensland Women's Week, and we said, okay, if we're asking women to support other women, why can't we ask our governments to procure services from companies that have at least 30% women on their board of directors or are 50% female owned? If women spent $818 billion as consumers, what are corporate spending? What are our government spending? What are not-for-profit spending? And what change could that possibly create the world over if they made that change? So the education is for all levels of society, and looking at how that is a huge economic lever. I don't know if you want to add to that.
We've thought from the start that it's such a scalable idea. It can be taken and applied in any size of community to actually teach, women to trade with other women and support each other financially and economically, because that path to independence, to freedom of choice, to education is actually through financial independence and financial means. So actually teaching, women financial literacy through things that they do every day, like shopping, we all have to buy shampoo and our basic necessities and food. If we can support women in the way that we do that every day, we can actually create social change and make a huge impact on the world.
And you see what Gulalai is creating with the scarf. That's a perfect example of female economy, By buying that scarf, it might just be a scarf to you, but actually to that community, it means education, it means not being in a life of servitude, it means you've got options. So it's really, it's quite very powerful.
And I think financial literacy is a great segue. Gulalai, you talked about that only 6% of women are banked in Pakistan or have bank accounts. And I'm not sure about that in Ghana, Winnie, but how do we get women, so women of my generation particularly, to talk about money and be more confident about asking for raises and checking their superannuation so that they're not retiring into poverty? But also, how do we reach out to communities that frankly haven't got the advantage that I have and say to them it's actually okay to start earning money and insisting on being the trader and getting all of the profit, or being involved in a social enterprise that's creating infrastructure to employ women. So how does this happen? I'm a great person asking why a lot. How can it happen?
Before I answer this question, I want to tell you, just to give you a cultural exposure from Pakistan, and I'm sure that it will be true for many South Asian countries as well. We have a culture in Pakistan about property. As per the law, when it comes to inheritance rights, usually women get half of what a son will get. So, for example, if my father has $100 and I have one brother, he will get $50, and the $50 will be divided between two sisters. But even this law is not implemented. Though this is like 50% of what the man gets from the inheritance, but even this law is not implemented. So if my father has property and if I ask for my share, then I will have to ask from my brothers that they should give me my share. It will be a legal battle. The chances are that I will win the legal battle, but at the cost of cutting off ties from my family. So a woman will be given her, because now there's a law, and the law gives women inheritance rights, property rights, so she will get it, but at the cost of cutting ties. So to strengthen the feudal patriarchal family structure, women have to give up their inheritance rights. Imagine talking about money in that culture, where by culture, woman is not supposed to own money, where by culture, woman is not supposed to own property. It's very complicated in that kind of culture. So I think that so how do we start? From where do we begin? Do we just kind of like keep it in the air? No. I think that maybe the beginning point is education, because now like 24 million children in Pakistan are out of school. It's a huge number, and most of those who are out of school are girls. Girls are the one, and only 15% of the girls are actually completing 12 years of schooling. This is like, if 15% of the girls are completing 12 years of schooling, imagine how much of them are completing universities. What is the level of education? Because we also have this will be a whole new debate of what is the kind of education that is given to girls, because even the kind of education which is given to girls, it advocates that girls should be in the home and they should be serving their families, and that is the kind of role models we study. I think we need a whole revolution in the education system as well. We need to change how women are role modeled within that education system. But even that bad education is only for 15% of the girls. So I think we need to begin from those, and women who have, because there are also now we see that the economies are changing. There is Femeconomy. People are thinking about feminist economies. So I think that people who do have money and who want to make this world a better place, they should begin from investing in high quality education for girls, because that's where, if they are educated, they will be able to work. They will be able to start their own enterprises, and they will be able to make their lives better for themselves. I also think that we need to recognize that women are not just women statistics. Like, it's not just that 20% of the women having access to resources, or let's say 30% of the women are running corporate sector, or they're running companies. No, we are not just statistic. We are kind of like groups who have political influences. We should recognize our political influence, and we should use our political influence for the sake of, as you're doing, educating governments, educating policymakers, sensitizing communities, and sensitizing those who make decisions. So recognizing our political power is very important. We are political groups. We are not just statistic. We're not just 20 women in the company. We're not just 10 women in the leadership position. Then it's also important that when we have power, we create feminist economies, and we don't create the same patriarchal economic structures that has been created by men. When we are in charge, when we are in power, we need to create feminist economies. And by feminist economies, I mean that when we have money and when we have power, we should make sure that we are implementing anti-sexual harassment laws in our working environment, in our offices. We are signing contracts with women. We are giving social security rights to women who work in our office. We are making sure that women who are able to get maternity leaves, fathers are able to get paternity leaves. So it's very important to create that conducive environment, not just in numbers and figures, but also creating an enabling environment where women who have multiple layers of marginalization, even they can have access to those resources. So we, women with power and with money, have to create systems which make it enabling for women who comes from a multiple layers of marginalization can access those resources and can access that money.
Sorry, I was just going to say as well, Gulalai, something that we always talk about is gender equality is also, it's also about gender equality for men. So actually breaking down the male breadwinner stereotype and, you know, and getting rid of that would actually be, I think, a very healthy thing for our economy. Mainstreaming flexible work and part-time working arrangements for men and normalising that, and not having, you know, this sort of community chatter or negative chatter around that affecting men or women's career opportunities as it does now. On a personal basis, my husband actually stayed home full time as primary carer for our daughter for 6 years, and 11 years ago that was highly unusual in Australia and certainly within the mining industry. And the sorts of negative connotations that had for him, personally, career-wise, I think that we need to have a different social discourse around work as well, and inclusion for women and for men.
And I think someone said it earlier today, it was a comment from the audience in an earlier session, we actually are inclusion activists. We need to think about how we bring diversity with us, bringing different voices as part of the conversation, because without that, things won't change.
Winnie, I'm going to circle back to the women, money, power and politics, because I would like to be educated more. What is it like as you grow up in Ghana as a woman who wants to be educated, wants money, wants power, influence?
Okay, one thing about Ghana is that there are, in terms of comparing the men to the women in politics, the men are more than the women. Secondly, the reason is that most women are not financially stable, because before you can enter into politics, you should be financially stable. Sometimes the campaign you are going to do, you have to use money. But if you are financially not stable, then you become powerless in terms of being able to make the impact, because now money is power. Before you can be able to transform life of people, if you don't have, it is sad. Example is myself. I started when I was 15 years of age, and I was able to impact life of these 3,000 girls with money. Without money, you cannot purchase the sanitary pads. Without money, you cannot even fuel the car that you are traveling to the private villages with. Without money, you cannot even produce these educational materials for these students that are vulnerable in the private villages. So unemployment is a key. But if these women, in as much as some of them have the passion to make an impact, if they are financially down, it turns into something like a shell that women are kept in, that they are not able to come out of that box to be able to exploit, to be able to be themselves, to be able to take initiatives, to be able to be bold, to be able to think outside the box, and then to be able to make an impact. So before you can be, you need to be financially stable. Money is powerful, and you can make an impact in the life of people when you are financially stable. If you don't have it, you cannot make the impact.
And it's a great way, will certainly be for me, and I'm going to quote you ad nauseum now for the next 12 months probably, around let's all get over the awkwardness about talking about money, and let's make sure that we're talking about money in the most positive terms, that money used ethically can change the world. Power used ethically can change the world. And so many times money and power are two words that are used, and there's an automatic assumption of unethical behaviour. So I think that's a call to action to the audience. The panel.
We get taken all the time as a not-for-profit, whereas we actually deliberately set ourselves up as a for-profit social enterprise. Both of our backgrounds are in business. My family's always had small businesses. To me, it's just a more sustainable model rather than relying on funding sources all of the time to generate revenue and then be able to grow and actually have more sustainable foundation and footing and to create more change more quickly. So that's our perspective. And also I think just from an independence and role modelling point of view. So I wanted to role model to my daughter that it is possible to be an activist for change in the world, to do good, to make profit, and to, those things actually are not mutually exclusive. They can coexist very peacefully, and I think it's actually a new business model that's emerging at the moment quite strongly.
And just to pick up on, new ways of working, I live regionally in northern New South Wales. We work remotely. I've got the biggest international network I've ever had in my working career working on Femeconomy. It is a new way of working. People will still engage with us even though I don't go to any office. I'm pretty much at home most of the time. Also, I think, seeing the transition that Jade's gone through after working 19 years in corporate HR leadership in male-dominated industries, we call it, there's an art to deprogramming yourself. There's an art to finding your authentic self, to finding your authentic voice, and it's been wonderful to watch that come through Femeconomy and seeing then now the change Femeconomy is creating in society. So I don't think we have to do it like it's always been done. I think we can create whatever we want to.
To me, it's actually about having balance in the leadership conversation, because if you a lot of our corporates, a lot of our government is unbalanced in terms of representation of what our communities actually look like. So that it's not really representing everybody's interests and bringing everybody's talents and unique perspectives to the table. To me, it's actually about valuing that diversity, and it's shown to be more powerful when you have an imbalance and you have a dominant group. Then you're going to have that dominant perspective that will always be creating the culture. So leadership behaviour creates culture at the end of the day, and that certainly was my experience. I could absolutely relate to what you said of working in construction. That was my experience working in mining, and having to kind of force fit myself into this very uncomfortable persona for a couple of decades, really, to the point where I felt like I was never coming to work as myself, not ever. I had to put the mask on every day, and when I was doing my makeup, I'd think, just put the mask on, put the armour on, get ready, go into battle. But having said that, it's been great career experiences. Certainly has built my resilience. But I think it needs to change.
And I think, so Winnie, I'm really curious around, I actually don't like masculine and feminine leadership. It's too binary. I think that we should have a more homogenous version of leadership, but that's why we all do what we do. Tell us about Ghana, though. In my mind, I'm picturing a very patriarchal, male-dominated society. So as a young woman, so you've got the woman, young activist. How do you work with male leaders, and what's been your experience around either adjusting or not adjusting your style?
Okay, in connection to what I do, before you can be able to make these great impact as a young girl, in as much as you get to a place where there are a lot of men, one, you have to deal with your boldness, you as a lady yourself. If you do not have that boldness, you would not be able to communicate with them. It's about believing your authentic self, who you are, and appreciating yourself, and letting that boldness in you come out. So when you meet those people, when they see that boldness in you, they're like, oh wow, this lady has already broken that shells of that cultural limitation. So then you are not going to be rude on them, but you will know how to communicate with them. Some people do not know what they are doing. But you have to, based on the communication with them and helping them think outside the box, they would appreciate you. So in as much as there are a lot of people, in terms of unemployment aspect is a big issue, that most women are unemployed. A lot of men are employed. So with issues like this, going to talk to these kind of men, that they should also give women the opportunity to be able to do what they want to do. They should empower us, but not to look down on these women. There are so many ways you have to do with these people so that they will not be offended, in as much as you want to make that great impact.
I think you've just described a very emotionally intelligent leadership approach, so well done. I'll come back because I'm curious to hear from these wonderful women around funding sources, whether it's grants, generating your own income, and then profit. What do we do with the profit? Gulalai, we had a brief chat around impact investing earlier.
So for us, for Aware Girls, when we launched the enterprise, we were dependent on grant money to start it. We needed support from someone who could invest in the business so that we can start it. So the funding source was, yes, funding, but then how we use the profit, that was the question. That was a choice of how do we, yes, we are selling women crafts, but that was our choice on what are we going to do with the profit. So some of the decisions that we took to make sure that the enterprise we are running is feminist is, number one thing that we did was that we were trying to become inclusive of women. So we reached out to women from very diverse backgrounds in the northwestern province of Pakistan, women with different skills, women with different abilities, different ethnicities, religion, and economic backgrounds. So that was number one thing. Then when we started the business, in Pakistan, the market is very male-dominated, and the middlemen are usually men, like the middlemen, they are men, and they are the one who usually sells it in the market. It was all men in the market. So we were the first one in the whole market who brought women. So in our shop, women are the salesperson, and they sell the products, and that was something very unique there. And we as women, because in our office we have all women, and we used to go to visit to that market to just keep a check and balance and to see what's happening. And just by going to the market again and again, not as consumers, like yes, as consumers, women do visit, like it's women in the market, but the one who sells and the one who owns, they are men. So we changed the whole market dynamics. When women were sitting in the shop, when women were going and having a check and balance, after us, our shop is in this plaza, and there are around 20-30 other shops. Just in 3 months, all of the shops were having one female employee at least. So that's like how just one, like our enterprise changed the dynamics for all other enterprises which were corporate in nature. It changed the dynamics for everyone. So, and then the timings kind of like we were trying to become more feminist, the kind of policies we were implementing, we were making sure that the people in our enterprises are getting decent wage. We were following the rules and regulations of the country so that they get the wages they deserve for the work and we could afford.
What about you, Winnie?
Okay, I think what I would say is that all these three things we spoke about work hand in hand in terms of grant, in terms of the profit, and what we use the profit for. One, talking about these grants, sometimes you need them as you start to get to somewhere. Example is myself. When we started with the bamboo bicycle, I was 15 years of age by then. The first grant we had was from Seed Initiative, which was $5,000. We started. In as much as you get these grants from beginning, does not mean you always have to depend on grant. Now, after you have gotten the grant, you've started and now there is profit coming. What do you use the profit for? Either you reinvest that profit in what you do. Because if you make up your mind you've gotten the profit, then you are saving the profit somewhere, always looking for grants. So what if you do not get grants? Again, in reference to same thing, talking about the menstrual pad issue, these distribution of the sanitary pads and the books I give out to the students. I do not get any profit. I produce these books, school bags, and these educational materials for these students in the privileges. Now, how do I make it sustainable? For how long am I going to give out these things for free? I'm in my second year at the tertiary. For how long? So sometime when it get to level like that, in as much as you are impacting life of people, to be able to expand your boundaries, at a point in time you might need these grants to be able to impact life of more people. Now, after you've gotten this grant, the grant is not just about, oh, I've gotten the grant, why don't I keep it somewhere and still keep on looking for grants? I do not have a factory where I produce the sanitary pads. So if I get a grant like that, what do? Because in Ghana, there is no company that does sanitary pad production. We always import them from outside, and they are very expensive. Getting grant like this, what do? I have to use it to acquire this equipment, these machines to start the sanitary pad production. Now, after starting the production, what do? I have to sell it at cheaper rates for these people, then I get profit. Then it can make it more sustainable. The profit I get, I can divide into two, still reinvest half of the profit to the menstrual pad production, and then half of it to the charitable aspect by getting these books production and these stuff also for them. So this is how it works, but not to solely depend on the grant, because if you make up your mind, you are not going to make you are not going to make good use of the profit you have gotten. But always looking for grant, always. If you do not get grant, then you will mess up. That is when you get to a point you realize, I'm fed up. I don't know what to do. Now you become frustrated because you are still depending on somebody. So in as much as you need these grants, when you get them, you make good use of it to make yourself sustainable, get this profit, reinvest the profit, and then expand your boundaries in terms of making impact.
And I think this is one of the myths that we should dispel, is that social enterprises are commercial enterprises. We are applying commercial pragmatism strategy for good financial management practices to create sustaining and enduring organisations that do create change, infrastructure change.
Now I see success as being able to have personal freedom, have financial freedom to do work that challenges me, that stretches me, that creates value in the world beyond me, that makes change, that creates a legacy for future generations. Work with people who I admire and respect and learn from, and that's my personal definition of success.
Thank you. I reckon we're just about at the GSD stage, get stuff done. I'm not going to swear. So this is the get stuff done question. All of the wonderful people in the audience, I'm sure they couldn't have been failed to be inspired by each one of you. But if I'm sitting in the audience and I've heard a lot of great stuff and I've heard some good information and we've had some beautiful insights into some different cultures and the barriers that women in other geographies face, what can I do? If I'm sitting in this audience, what each one of you, what one thing, maybe two, what one thing would you ask each one of these women to consider and take action on as they walk out the door or soon after?
So when you walk out of the door, two things I would like you to consider is that, number one, when you have the power to make impact, please do consider that many women around the world, many girls around the world, they don't have access to quality education. And let's find out ways and means to make sure that every girl around the world has access to at least basic secondary education so that they can make the choices for themselves that we in this room have already. Let's enable those girls who can make the choices. And number two, when you have the power and resources, and when you have the choice on how to use the profit, let's make the commitment to use the profit for social good of women, especially those women who are the most marginalized one, such as, for me, those are domestic workers in Pakistan.
Okay, the first thing I want to talk about is, before you step out of this room, if you have the resources, if you have what it takes to push an entrepreneur or somebody with a great vision, especially females, do it out of your heart and push these people. I am saying this because there are a lot of entrepreneurs out there that some of them would be able to break that kind of ceiling to be able to impact life of thousands of people for the next generation to come. But it depends on you and you. It can be your little investment. It can be just a word. It can be your contribution that would be able to push them out there. If you have, please invest in females. If you have, invest in us to be able to push, to be able to impact life of these people. I always tell people, in as much as I'm in my second year at the university, still in school, I have been able to impact life of these 3,000 girls, even without having this menstrual pad factory. So what if I get investors? What if people come together to say, okay, let us push to impact these young entrepreneurs to be able to impact life of other people from their various countries. It does not matter, it can be in every part of the world. Impact their lives and see how they will be able to impact life of the next generation through your contribution. So as you step out, think about how to impact life of these female social entrepreneurs out there. Thank you.
So Australian female consumers habitually shop and are loyal to 10 brands. So we're asking you to take the Femeconomy pledge. Find out what your top 10 brands are and go to our site and make sure they are Femeconomy approved. Who do you buy your groceries from? Where do you get your petrol? Who do you bank with? Where do you get your homewares? Where do you buy your alcohol? There's so much on the site, and the power is in our hands or in your purse.
So there's your call to action, and in summary, because I'm very conscious of time, money isn't a dirty word. Feminism is not the domain of middle-aged Western women like me. Use your money deliberately, mindfully and purposefully to advance women, whether you're investing, whether you're buying or whether you're donating. And follow us all on Twitter. Thank you, ladies.